I got scammed, so you don't have to. So recently, the Kickstarter for my book, Sparks in Iceland, completed. This is a friends to lovers sweet romance, and we raised over $4,000 with this Kickstarter. And with the Kickstarter, we unlocked some really cool stretch goals, such as getting character art printed directly inside the book. Now that is the fun part about doing Kickstarters and creating special editions, that you can do fun things like that. And since we unlocked the character art stretch goal, I of course needed to hire an illustrator. And that is where our scam story starts today. I was so excited to get character art done for the first time that in the process I almost got scammed. So I wanted to share my story so it doesn't happen to you as well, because there was some very clear red flags that I was ignoring because I was so excited, and I'm just going to be pointing them out to you guys today. Hello everyone, my name is Mandy. I'm an author, the creator of the Book Launch Planner series, and I also make courses on book cover design and book formatting. If you like weekly videos on the business of being an author, then make sure to subscribe and hit that bell notification icon so you never miss a new upload. You can also join as a YouTube member for behind the scenes content as well as early access to videos. Okay, so it is officially story time. I'll put this right here so you guys can admire my book cover while I chit chat. So even though we didn't unlock character art until the end of my Kickstarter campaign, I had been looking for illustrators for a while because I wanted to have an illustrator on hand to hire for when it came time to actually create the character art to go inside the book. Obviously, I've worked with an illustrator before because that is how the cover itself was created. This was done by an illustrator, but I wanted to choose an illustrator who had a slightly different style, and I also just thought it would be fun to try out a different illustrator to see what that was like. And I had reached out to so many illustrators, and none of them were open to commissions. All the really popular illustrators that other romance authors use weren't open anymore, and that made me really bummed because I loved their art style, but they just weren't taking new clients. And I feel like one of the best places to find illustrators is on Instagram, but odds are if you find someone, it's someone who's super popular and isn't open for commissions. So naturally that meant when someone reached out to me saying that they do character art and that they're open to commissions, I got really excited. And their profile didn't have a ton of examples of their work, but it was like a style that was similar enough to what I was looking for that I got excited. And she was super nice. But let me talk about red flag number one, which is the fact that she reached out to me. Now, I've actually given out advice before that if someone reaches out to you as a service, that there's the potential that they are a scam, because I always say if someone's service is actually really good, they don't need to cold message people. And I can say this as someone who used to offer services. I used to do cover design and I used to do book formatting for other authors. I never once had to cold message people. Even when I first got started out, I guess I technically reached out to other authors, but they weren't like random authors that I'd never talked to before. They were people that were like a friend of a friend or someone I had spoken to in the past that I knew needed a book cover designed, and because I was just starting off, I gave them a super cheap deal and did it for very cheap and just wanted to practice. So as someone who's a freelancer, it kind of breaks my heart to say like, oh, if they're cold messaging you, it's probably a scam, because I genuinely don't think that is always the case. But I do think, especially lately, because I've been getting a ton of messages like that, is if they reach out to you first, you need to do extra work to do research before you actually hire them. Now, the issue here is that I was just really excited to do character art, and I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt that even though she reached out to me and I wasn't the one reaching out to her, that she still offered a legit service. Let's talk about red flag number two, which is the fact that she didn't send me samples of our work until after I told her exactly what I was looking for. Now, of course, she was an Instagram profile, so I could go to her Instagram profile and see samples of her work. But it wasn't exactly the type of art that I was looking for. She was showing more like anime sort of things, and I didn't see any examples of like regular character art of like a couple together. So when I told her that, she sent me like 10 samples, and I looked at them and I was like, this is perfect. And they were pretty similar to the other art style that she had on her profile. But again, I ignored the fact that none of those samples were on her profile until after I asked her about what I was looking for. And then later she started posting those samples on her profile, and it was a bit of a mess. Red flag number 3, which is probably the biggest red flag, is that she never tagged her clients. So typically when an illustrator shares their work on Instagram, they post whatever their work was, and then they either tag the person that they made the artwork for, or they add that person as a contributor or collab. I forget exactly what Instagram calls it, where it posts to both profiles at the same time, but she would just post the photo and say another completed or approved commission and put in all her information about hiring her. She would never say who her client was, which honestly is definitely the biggest red flag, because if you've never worked with someone before and you've never talked to someone who's worked with them before, you typically want to reach out to the other clients and message them and be like, hey, was she good to work with? Was she easy to work with? You know, how was the process? Just to make sure that it's legit and that they're not someone who's hard to work for. Red flag number 4, and this was the one that really had me getting wary, is that she didn't want to send me an invoice. We started discussing payment, and honestly, she was super nice. She was like, I'm going to give you a discount, which looking back was maybe another red flag, that she was like, as a first-time customer, I'm going to give you a discount, which typically, as a freelancer myself, I typically give my discounts to return customers versus new customers, but maybe that's just how I operate my business. But either way, she was like, I'm going to give you this discount. And then I told her, I'm like, I need commercial rights. And she was like, oh, it's going to be an additional blah, blah, blah for commercial rights. Is that okay? And I'm like, yeah, of course. That's why I asked. Of course, commercial rights is going to be more with commercial rights versus without. So she was super, super nice, but when I asked for an invoice, she was like, oh, can you pay me directly? And I'm like, no, I have a bookkeeper. I need invoices for everything. I just do it for taxes. I have to track everything. And because at this point, I couldn't find any of her clients that she tagged, I was getting like a little wary, and I wanted to have the invoice that in case this ended up being a scam, I wanted the invoice through PayPal so I could dispute it, and I wanted the invoice to say very clearly what I was supposed to be getting, because if the invoice didn't have it very clear, I wasn't going to be paying for it. And invoices protect everyone. And again, as a freelancer, I can say this with experience. When I send invoices to my clients, there's actually a contract at the end of the invoice that basically says when you're allowed to ask for a refund, how many revisions you're allowed, what your rights are to the design, how everything works. Like any issues that come up are covered in the little contract that's attached to the invoice. And basically by paying the invoice, you are signing and agreeing to that contract. And this protects everyone. It makes it very clear for the client to know the terms and conditions of everything, and it makes it clear to me. That way, if there's ever any issues, it's already basically been resolved and figured out on how we're going to handle this. And this comes from someone who has many, many years working with clients. And because I have so many years of working with clients, my little contract at the end of my invoices is actually decently long because of how many issues I've had with other people and how many things I've had to clarify over time. But anyways, the invoice is for everyone's protection. It's for the freelancer's protection, and it's for the client's protection. She didn't want to send an invoice, but she said that she did. Which brings me on to red flag number 5, is that she was in a rush for me to pay. I'm not saying that she was pushy, but she was saying that the reason why she didn't want to send me an invoice was that she wasn't near her computer and that she would have to get home first to send the invoice. And I'm like, yeah, of course, that's fine. Like, I don't need to pay this immediately. But of course, she wanted me to pay immediately because she wants me to pay before I figure out that the whole thing is a scam. And then when she finally did send the invoice, now I wasn't near my computer, and she was like, okay, I sent the invoice, and she sent me a screenshot of the invoice. And then she was like, when you pay, send me a screenshot to let me know that you paid. And I'm just sitting there like, if I paid the invoice, you should also get an email saying that I paid the invoice. I shouldn't need to send you a screenshot to let you know that I paid the invoice. Which brings me to red flag number 6, which is that the name on her PayPal was different than the name on her profile. So on her Instagram profile, her name was Jennifer, but on her PayPal email, it was a completely different name. Let's just say it made it very clear to me that I was being scammed. And it also wasn't an invoice through PayPal, it was just a money request through PayPal saying that it was for character art, which I was not willing to pay that. And I was like, I am not paying this until it's a legit invoice, not a money request, because I don't really know if you can dispute a money request or not, but by that point, I knew I wasn't even going to get as far as paying it. But now, by this point, all the red flags were flying, and I was getting really, really paranoid. I was looking back at all the samples she sent me, and I'm like, all right, is any of this made with AI? Because that was my biggest fear, was I didn't want to hire someone to make something using AI. And I had actually messaged her to double check, like, hey, I just want to make sure you don't use any AI during your creation process, right? And she assured me, she's like, no, I don't do any of that. Sometimes I'll use like a software to scale it up and make it bigger without losing resolution, which even that had me a little weirded out, because I was like, shouldn't you just design it at a large resolution so that shouldn't need? But anyways, I don't know enough about illustration to be able to speak on that. The point is, I was getting paranoid, and I was looking really closely at her samples and trying to figure out if any AI was being used to create them. Which brings us on to red flag number 7, which is the red flag that confirmed everything for me, which was when I did a reverse image search on the samples that she sent me. So I had to go ahead and take all the samples of her work, and I did reverse image searches on Google. And when I did that, eventually I found a different Instagram profile that had thousands of followers and hundreds of posts using the same style that this other person had claimed was their own. But it was very clear that I had found the original artist at this point, who had way more samples of work and a very clear one style. Like, they only ever did character art for romance books, and they tagged their clients, and it was just very clear. I found the legit artist, and I actually messaged her and let her know of this other person pretending that their art was their own. I know I'm not sharing names right now, and that's just because I feel very weird talking about someone on my YouTube channel by name and pointing them out by name. I know there's no reason for me not to share their name. At this point, the person who was trying to scam me deserves to be blacklisted because there were so many red flags, but I think what's going to happen is they're going to delete this profile and restart and do it all over again to someone else. So sharing the name really doesn't matter. What really does matter is sharing the red flags so you can spot them yourself. So yeah, all the work was stolen, and I ended up letting the original artist know, and I shared the profile name with the original artist. We both reported the profile on Instagram. I don't know if it's going to get taken down. And then I reached out to the person who was trying to scam me, and I actually let them know, like, hey, I found the original artist of the samples you provided, so for that reason, we will not be moving forward. And the odd thing is that she basically owned up to the fact that she stole someone else's art and claimed it as her own, but still wanted me to work with her, and just said like, oh, it's because I don't have a lot of experience in character art, but I want to, and I'll do the sketch first so you can see that I'm legit and that I'm not scamming you, and then you can pay after the sketch. And I'm just like, really? And I ended up blocking her after reporting her, and it was this whole thing. But I was like, this is ridiculous. And then before I blocked her, she kept messaging me being like, hey, have you thought of it? Like, did you still want to work together? And then that's at the point that I blocked her. But yeah, so I imagine I'm not the first person this has happened to. Looking back now, I can see it's actually would be very easy to just steal someone else's art and post it to your Instagram profile, say it's yours, have other people pay you for commissions. So it was this whole mess. Luckily, I never ended up paying. I figured everything out before I paid. But I can imagine if I was just super, super eager and in a rush to get my character art done, that I would have paid before I did that final reverse image search. Because to be totally honest, I just thought I was believing in a new artist. I just saw it as someone who's a new illustrator, is wildly talented, but just doesn't have the clientele yet. And I thought, you know, I was willing to risk my money on her. And I was like, her art is beautiful. I'm going to go for it. And yeah, that bit me in the butt because I believed in the good of people. So my bad, but I wanted to share my story, so hopefully the same thing doesn't happen to you. Always do your research when it comes to anybody who reaches out to you. If anyone reaches out to you about a service or anything, be aware that it might be a scam. And in fact, I know for a fact there's someone pretending to be me, as well as many other authors on YouTube, emailing our audience who comments on our YouTube videos, pretending to be us and pretending to offer these like membership or mentorship programs. And it's not a thing. It's not. The internet is rampant with scams right now, so please just do your research, do your due diligence. And speaking of the whole YouTube scam thing that's going around right now, because I will speak on that super quickly, if you have a YouTube profile and you comment on my YouTube videos, please make sure that your email is not public to everyone else, because if it is, that is how these scammers are emailing you, pretending to be YouTubers that you follow, trying to sell you membership programs. And with that said, if you don't hear me talking about a membership program or mentorships on my YouTube channel, it means it's because that service doesn't exist. So yeah, if you don't see me talking about something on YouTube or my Instagram, it means that I'm not selling that thing and the person who emailed you is probably scamming you. I don't use Gmail to email my followers. Okay, so that went a little off topic, but I thought it was important to mention while we're talking about scams. But that is going to be it for this video. Thank you all for watching. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up. And if you have any scammer stories, I guess share them in the comments down below so we can all learn from each other. I'll see you all in the next video.